What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, checking out the CRKT CEO. Have two models on the table, although I'm going to be focusing mostly on this original version because that's the one that's readily available and most people are going to be familiar with. Although I will talk about the differences between this other model, which I couldn't do a CEO video without including my favorite version of it. This was a Blade HQ exclusive, so unfortunately it's no longer available, but you can still get the same handle material and steel, just not this exact colorway. Now, the original version goes for anywhere between $40, $45. It's been around for a decent amount of time now, so pretty easy to find and occasionally does go on sale. And it's one of CRKT's most popular models, so they've done a ton of variations of this, and including the one on the table. But once that kind of well ran dry of different scale materials, different colorways, they eventually changed the model up, added a flipper tab, did the compact version, which is a little bit shorter. I have that one as well. We'll most likely do a video on it. But from there, they actually did another version called the Micro. And so don't have that one yet. I may pick it up eventually. But really cool little knives. They kind of market them as a gentleman's knife, and I think that it looks classy, but wouldn't necessarily be my first choice as a gentleman's knife. But the reason they're doing that is the intended use case. And so they called this the CEO, and they intend people to carry this in that front shirt pocket or jacket pocket, blend in with their pens, and really be something that you can carry in the office and isn't going to be too intimidating. And like I said, disappears with your pens. Now, I think that works well. It's, like I said, pretty classy, and especially at this price point, 40, 45 bucks, I think this is a good looking knife. But again, not really something I'd consider gentleman's carry. Otherwise though, the material on here, this is actually GRN. It's not carbon fiber, although it may look like it. If you look closely, it does have a pattern kind of milled into there. It's like almost a Sageha pattern, but not exactly that either. It's a little bit busier and a little bit more compact. It ends up looking like a triangular carbon fiber pattern. In fact, I have some carbon fibers still on the table from a previous video, and you can see they definitely go well together, even though this isn't carbon fiber. So I think that looks good. It doesn't add a lot in terms of grippiness. Even though there's that texturing on there, it's really not adding anything to the grippiness. The micarta version is significantly more grippy. Now, it is thumb stud deployment, and by the looks of it, you would think you don't have a ton of access to that thumb stud. It tucks up nicely into those handles, and you can see closed, no part of the blade is exposed. And so looks like you don't have a lot of access, but they did a good job of kind of milling that out so you have a little bit more access, and then adding some texturing to that thumb stud where it's really easy to deploy this. It is on bearings, so super smooth as well, and deceptively long. I don't know why it feels like it should be shorter. I think it's because it's such a thin knife. The handle's only 1/2 inch wide and 0.42 inches deep. And so relatively thin and fills kind of the space of a pen, so you don't expect it to be super large, but 7.54 inches overall, which is pretty decent. 4.4 inches on the handle, meaning you can get an easy 4-finger grip on it. For me, again, size large hands. If you have larger hands, it may not be the case, but for me, easy 4-finger grip and really, really comfortable actually. 3.1 inches on the blade. It's relatively thin at 0.08 inches along that spine. And this is a really small blade as well. So this knife isn't necessarily meant for heavy duty cutting tasks, although it might be able to do them in a pinch. Definitely not its intended use case. Perfect for opening packages, cutting through tape, opening letters. In fact, this really thin profile of the blade makes it nice to be able to slide up into the envelope and open letters really, really nicely. And right now I have this living in a pen jar on my desk. And when I used to go to the office, I would carry it sometimes in my front pocket, sometimes I'd drop it into a drawer at my desk with other pens and office stationery, but definitely fits in well there. It's not intimidating at all. Super lightweight at only 2.1 ounces, so really lightweight. The blade still on here is an 8CR 13 MOV. No problem with that whatsoever, especially at this price point and its intended use case. That's going to be perfect, and so no problem with the steel on there. Now, the pocket clip is not reversible, right hand tip down carry, so not tip up either. And that was definitely an intentional choice. If you're putting this in your pant pocket, that's not so convenient, but in a shirt pocket, if you're reaching into the pocket, pulling that out, your thumb's gonna be right on top of that thumb stud. So the placement of that works well. Now, one thing I should mention, this is a liner lock, and the liners are skeletonized, so there's a little bit of weight saving in there, but liner lock that you don't have a lot of access to. So if you just try and use the meat of your thumb, it's doable, but very difficult. The easiest way to access that liner lock is to go in there sideways with your thumb and use your nail on it. And so that's not super intuitive until you've been carrying it, but if you've been carrying other knives, it's not super intuitive, but easiest way to do it by far. It's definitely pretty hard to get your finger into that small space if you don't go sideways. And so don't love that about it, but otherwise relatively easy to use. And once you figure it out, it's again, not an issue. Now, in terms of the overall kind of billboarding on it, the blade has a little bit, you have the CRKT logo over here. Not too bad, it's pretty minimal, pretty small. You have a ton of stuff on the non-show side though. And that's also pretty minimal though. As much as on there, it's not super noticeable because it's also small. So you have the model number. I'm not sure how well any of this is picking up, but the model number, what I'm assuming is a maker's mark, although it could be a logo for their bearing system just because it's got kind of a bunch of balls in a circle with arrows going around as if it were a bearing. So it could be their bearing system, or it could be their maker's mark, which has right here Rogers Design, which is designed by Richard Rogers, as well as the model name, the CEO. So a little bit of billboarding on that blade, but the handles are really nice and clean. The show side, absolutely nothing when closed. The non-show side, you just have it on that pocket clip. And so wouldn't mind seeing that not be there, because that's a really dead giveaway that what you're carrying is probably a knife. Even though CRKT makes pens, if someone recognizes the brand, they probably recognize it because of knives. Most people aren't going to recognize it anyway, so it doesn't matter. So steel liners on here. You have this kind of back spacer, although I don't know if it's a back spacer, maybe a tail spacer. It's kind of at the butt of the knife, and so that looks nice and keeps it super clean looking. You can also stand it on there, which if you wanted to do that for whatever reason, you could probably use this as a little bit of a hammer as well, although definitely not the recommended use case. But overall, really clean knife. I like it at the price point, 40, 45 bucks. I don't think that's bad at all. Just kind of keep in mind what it's intended to use for. If you're using this on a job site, putting it through the ringer, this isn't going to be the best knife for that. This is really a secondary knife that's meant to live in an office. And if you're using it for that case, I think you'll probably like it. If you're trying to use it for more than that, probably not the right knife for that. Now, I do have another version here. As I mentioned, this colorway is sold out, but you can get micarta scales and a D2 blade. And so this one does have D2 instead of that 8CR13 MOV. It's also got that black wash, which I believe you can get on the original as well. Now, the other things that kind of stand out, that green micarta I think looks really good, and then in combination with this copper finished stainless steel, one of my favorite looking knives. I have the CRKT Squid in this same colorway and just love the way it looks. Now, one thing I do want to mention, since I have two of them, the action on these is very different. I described the original one as super snappy and it's smooth but fast and responsive. This one doesn't feel as responsive. It is extremely smooth and drops shut a little bit easier, but doesn't feel as satisfying to open. It doesn't have as solid of a thunk when it gets to that end position, and just isn't quite as satisfying to open, even though it's extremely smooth. It just doesn't have as strong of a detent as the original version that I have. So your mileage may vary depending on which one you pick up, or really even if you pick up the original, your action may be a little bit different, which is to be expected on a $40 knife. But overall, I think these are really cool knives. I'm gonna do a video on the compact at some point. I will maybe do a video on the micro. I don't actually have one, so I have to buy one first if I end up doing that. But let me know what you think of this knife down in the comments below. As always, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification button. It does help out the algorithm, but also just enjoy interacting with you all. Hope you have a great one. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.